You should at least be dead with all the dark eco I pumped into you.
Jak 2, in stark contrast to its predecessor, is a much more story-driven game. Where the precursor Legacy was a Banjo-Kazooie-esque collectathon, Jak 2 takes you down a dark tunnel of political corruption, the impending threat of monster invasion, and a nagging question of how we even got here. A lot is promised in the concept of this game, but how well is this promise delivered? Come with me, and I'll take you through this twisting story to the end, giving my thoughts along the way, and I'm gonna let you know if I think this game is still good even today. One of the first things you might notice on screen, it's certainly the change I noticed first, subtitles. That's right, now we can actually play this game with my required 7 other sources of audio going, because if I'm left alone with my own thoughts for even a second, I'll go insane. An indeterminate period of time after the precursor Legacy, the post-credit stinger device has somehow been brought back to Sandover, and it's now finally time to turn it on. Samos makes a big deal about how he knows Jak can do it, but this big red button seems pretty hard to miss. Once the machine activates, literally everything goes wrong. A big-ass monster shows up, Samos says some cryptic stuff that will probably make more sense later, and we fall into the Doctor Who theme. Everyone gets conveniently split up right before we fall into this strange, massive city before getting bonked by some guards that are
waiting for you.
And then Daxter runs away. This is the best thing that Daxter could have done in this situation, and I will accept no arguments otherwise. 2-year time jump. Turns out that Jak has not been having a party for these past 2 years and has instead been getting tortured and injected with a whole bunch of this dark eco. For some reason, he is not just killed here, rather they decide to wait until the night so that he can conveniently escape as soon as Daxter comes up. Jak, for the first time now in his entire life, utters his first words.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
They grow up so fast. Daxter sets us free, very nearly gets sliced for his efforts, and we get into some gameplay. For the most part, the controls are the same, maybe a bit tighter than before, which does feel nice. The biggest change is the camera. There's still no option to change it, but the inverted horizontal controls are gone. Ironically, this tripped me up for a bit at the start, coming off the first game. First person is completely inverted, but that's not really used in gameplay. There are some isolated first person sections later that go back to an inverted vertical camera, but it isn't a huge problem given that it is used so infrequently. As far as the tutorial actually goes, I liked this way more than I thought I would. A prison break is much higher stakes than I was anticipating, and we no longer get frozen in place to explain the mechanics. Jak deletes a man, which I feel like Daxter should have definitely had something to say about, but I guess we'll just gloss over it. We hop, smash, and slide our way out into the bright, sunny skies of... oh. This city, Haven, is a much darker place than anything we've seen so far in this series. The slums we start in are dirty, decrepit, and run down. All over Haven, propaganda speakers boom with the Baron's voice. It's a huge contrast to everything in the first game, but I love it. The different city sectors are all so wildly different, and it's large enough to feel like an actual city, rather than the 4 buildings we get in games like Skyrim. But for now, we've got an old guy and a kid to talk to, and oh look, more mindless slaughter. Dark Jak is introduced here, and he's a nice addition, but I didn't really use him too much. In effect, switching to Dark Jak makes us hit harder, faster, and farther for a short time. Collect enough Dark Eco from enemies to fill the bar, and you can change whenever you want. Why Dark Eco turned Jak into a silver fighting machine and Daxter into a rodent, I have no idea. So now, rather than, say, trying to find our friends, or maybe doing some digging to figure out where we are and why, instead we're gonna go join an underground resistance ring with the living embodiment of Edge as our contact. In order to join, we have to get a flag off the top of a building in an old, dead part of town. It's an odd recruitment requirement, but to each their own. Let's step back for a moment. Already, the story drive here is an order of magnitude higher than the precursor Legacy. I love everything so far. We have direction, we have a reason to be mad personally at the Baron. We even have some hidden intrigue driving us forward toward answers. Each mission, because they are missions now, not just levels with scattered goals, has a clear task in mind, and we know what we're meant to be doing even if we don't always know exactly why. We may visit the same area more than once, but each time things are different. Our actions from prior visits have a lasting impact, and our goal in that area is always wildly different. So yes, Torn, that's a stupid name by the way, I will go get that flag. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Our next task is to turn the water back on for the slums, and while that is laudable, I think now is a good time to talk about navigation. The speeders I love so much from the first game do actually come back with a decent visual upgrade. There are different types, from a bike to two-seaters, which all handle a bit different than one another. They're also all now jet-powered, rather than being big scary fans beneath your feet. They're not quite as fun to drive now. The world isn't built only for speeders, and they have a tendency to bounce on every little thing you drive over, but overall I do still love the inclusion, and they are the fastest way to get around Haven, so I'm not complaining. Yet. Given that the overall structure of this game is now mission-focused, not every single mission is integral to the plot. Unfortunately, I will have to skip some for the sake of brevity. Just know that if I skip a mission, we probably blew at least one thing sky high. Also, this AI guy is back, now in a house for some reason. He definitely can't afford the property taxes, but he'll give us new dark powers in exchange for some Metalhead skull gems. So I'm glad my tiny little goblin brain decided to pick up those shiny crystals before, despite not knowing why I'd need them. Our next bit of plot comes after being chased by this tank, which I know in my heart hates me specifically. Crimson Guards are dealing eco to some Metalheads on the orders of Baron Praxis himself. Why could he be doing this? Let's take a few minutes and think about what his plan might be. Shit. One package delivered, mostly intact later, and we meet Mr. Tiny Legs, aka Crew, and his hired gun Sig. Sig is the best boy to exist, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. I would die for this man, and will several times in the future. Offering to help Sig out gets us our first gun. That's right, the enemies aren't the only ones shooting this time around. We start with just a shotgun, but we'll get 3 others as the game progresses. The guns are solid, but lack any way to aim, save for pointing Jak at the enemy. This is compensated by heavy auto-aim, which does help, but good luck if there's more than 2 enemies in front of you, and you need to hit someone further back. I embarrass myself in the shooting range and move on, pride only slightly damaged. Crew tells us later that the Baron is dealing eco to the Metalheads, and in return, they're not going to go too hard on the city so he can perpetuate this war and stay in power. This is dropped on us and then immediately glossed over so that we can go trudging through the sewers. Before our next bit of story, do you want to know what I didn't expect in this game about political corruption and war? Sick grinds. That's right, we now get to prove ourselves on a hoverboard for a girl that we totally don't know. The hoverboard is only okay. Movement is solid, no problems there. It's when we try to do tricks that I have some issues. You have to jump, then hold L1, then move the analog stick to do anything, and the jumps often aren't quite high enough for my apparently lacking reaction time. King Edgelord orders us to rescue an underground informant from a Metalhead-infested mining operation, and while I may think this sounds interesting, Daxter apparently has a different opinion.
How come we get all the crappy missions?
Because I don't like you.
Fair enough.
Over the next few missions with that informant, whose name is Vin, we learn that the eco is drying up, which is a problem given that the only thing keeping the Metalheads out is the deals made by Baron Praxis. We'll go ahead and file that under problems for future me and move on, and would someone please get this man some medication? Daxter decides to sample some drinks from behind the bar and gets White Girl wasted, while Crew tells us to pick up some money drops around the city. Immediately after, we get sent out to rescue another underground operative. Here, we're introduced to the 2000s era, corporate-mandated hot girl with a gun and no clothes, Ashlyn. She dies immediately when I launch myself off a cliff and we have to restart. There are a few instances of this protect the VIP type mission in Jak 2. Sometimes they help you fight, most of the time they don't really. The times when they do help you out are nice, but to amp up the difficulty for these, the game will oftentimes throw an absurd number of enemies at you. If you have ammo for this is fine, but Mar protect you if you ever happen to run out. Ashlyn then sends us to Onin, an older-than-dirt oracle, because the Baron is planning something big having to do with ancient artifacts of the city's founder, Mar. She, of course, pulls this access pass out of her cleavage to unlock more of the city. I'm gonna have to yada yada over some things here, because, well, a lot of it boils down to go here, talk to this person so they can send you someplace else, go there, and either fight some things or blow something up. Usually both. I can't go over every single story beat because I've already rambled on for 4 pages worth of script, and we're only on recording 4 of 19. So, get some stuff from the Precursor Ruin, reroute some power to turn on an elevator, and don't worry about all the future past time stuff Onin talks about. It definitely won't come up again later, I promise. It's really never going to be important. And now, the palace. The Metalhead leader is getting impatient, and Errol wants to launch a preemptive strike against them now. Praxis hints at a backstory to his metal implants and knows that any assault would fail, so instead he plans to keep them docile until they grow complacent and weak. Given what we've seen so far, this plan seems doomed to fail in spectacular fashion. We also learn learn that the Baron is desperately looking for Mars' tomb and some kid, who we learned earlier is the true heir to the throne. Oh, and also Ashlyn is the Baron's daughter. That's a lot to unpack all at once, so like anyone would, the game bottles up all of those unprocessed issues and moves right along to our first boss fight. The bosses in Jak 2 have received a massive upgrade. Every boss is broken down into 3 phases, indicated by the 3 segments of their health bar. Bosses are more difficult, each phase will have unique mechanics, usually, and they feel more like a real challenge than a curb stomp. They aren't Dark Souls bosses, sure, but they're leaps and bounds above anything seen in the Precursor Legacy, and I am all here for it. This first Praxis fight is damned fun compared to the plant thing from before. Oh hey, it's that kid again. I wonder if he's the super important heir to the throne they were just talking about. Yeah, no, you're right, Torn. These 4 clones are much more important than everything we just learned. And now back to Dead Town. Hey, are you ready for the single line that turns this game's story from odd to downright confusing?
We're in the future, Dax. This horrible place is our world.
Do you think we're going to mention that again? Do you think we're going to put any sort of emphasis on this at any point in the near future? If you guess no, congratulations, you win a free trip to Haven City. So yes, we're in the future, and hey, Samos is here, but he's young. You can tell because his beard is smaller and he's not a dick for absolutely no reason right now. This mind-shattering revelation will now sit on the back burner while we go take down some cool-looking dragon things. Blow some stuff up above ground, blow some stuff up underground. Oh hey, there's that kid again. I swear he looks familiar. Oh, and he is the heir to the throne. I never would have guessed. Right around here is where I started to get really frustrated playing this game, specifically with the open world. Haven City is pretty large and full of twists and turns. Running is the safest way to go, but it's incredibly slow. Unfortunately, every other method of transportation runs the risk of hitting a person, wall, or guard. Jak 2 took me just under 10 hours to beat, and a not insignificant portion of that was just going from point A to point B, and then also to point C just to complete one mission. I wouldn't mind this if there was anything of any value to do here. There are some hologram boards to do a few side tasks here and there, but I never found them worthwhile. Now, I'm gonna say something potentially controversial here. I think this game would have been much better without the open world. I know, but hear me out. An open world with nothing to do isn't worth it. Jak 2 is an open world just for the sake of being an open world. Had this been more direct and mission to mission, this all might have flown much better and the plot may not have gotten lost with every 4th wall I crashed into.
Oh, Daxter, you're amazing.
Is this woman hot and bothered for a rat? Vin is still paranoid, Core acts a little suspicious, but I'm sure that's nothing, and now we get to blow up a plane. This is what I was talking about before with the inverted vertical camera. I bring it up again now because this is probably the most annoying instance of it, but again, it's easy enough to adapt to. I just think it's odd that they decided to make it different from the normal camera. Next up, we have to do more for the mechanic, who is actually Kira. A nice touch is that Jak has been the one talking this whole time, and Kira wouldn't know what he sounds like because he's never talked before. It isn't until Daxter talks that she realizes who we are and we get a nice little reunion. The speeder races are a fun time for me. They remind me of the old Precursor Basin days, and while I understand that the overworld speeders can't move like this all the time, I really wish they did. Shoot, 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 and now we've gotten a lurker totem to help us find the Tomb of Mar. All this trouble we've been causing has forced the Baron to roll out some shiny new cars for the guards, which we, of course, promptly blow sky high. I sure hope those weren't expensive. Now is where my frustration started to seep over into the actual missions. I can't pinpoint exactly where it happens, but a huge spike in difficulty happens somewhere along the lines, and it really started to grind my gears here. I don't mind a challenge, it makes things more fun in my opinion, but what I do mind is being swarmed by endless enemies with sometimes pinpoint accuracy. This game came out before the not everyone can attack at once mindset entered gaming, and it makes me really appreciate that design choice. The short period of invincibility between getting hit can end while you're still in the air getting hit, causing you to get hit again and effectively stun lock you right into death. Couple that with being hurt just by touching these guys, plus incredibly inconsistent mission checkpoints, and this isn't a fun challenge. This is a brute force slog of trial and error. I'm not going to go on about this for too long, just know that the latter 30% of missions in this game really got on my nerves. The tomb is similar in my mind to the Citadel from Precursor Legacy. We've got 2 trials to complete, one based more on puzzle solving and one on platforming. We do also get to, for the first time, play as Daxter running away from a giant spider. This This one segment will go on to spawn an entire prequel game that I will probably get around to covering at some point. Trials complete, and we get some backstory from the precursors. The Metalheads have been around for ages, warring with the precursors themselves back in the day. The precursor stone everyone has been hunting for is our last hope for stopping them, and here it is. Well done, everyone.
Brought me right to the stone.
Son of a. Praxis Fight 2, Electric Boogaloo, is another decent boss fight. Shoot the little bots, kick the bombs back at him, and try not to get shot yourself. Before you know it, he floats out of here with the big gem in his possession. Also, all of our friends got captured, so that sucks. Turns out Torn betrayed us, but only because the Baron would have killed his daughter if he didn't, so I guess it's alright. He never suffers any repercussions from this, so I guess moving on to the big plan to go and rescue everyone. Golden Guards are a thing now, showcasing that we've entered a new stage of the story, and they're a pain. They don't do any extra damage, but they do take an annoyingly high number of shots to take down versus the regular guards too. We break back into the torture chamber we broke out of a few hours ago and learn that Samos, the old Samos, not the young Samos, was in a cell this whole time. I don't know why he didn't shout or anything when we busted out before, but oh well. He's still just as grumpy as we remember. Sig is questioning the actions of Crew because he is the best person to ever live on this planet, and now we go blow up a big statue to get the sweet treasure hidden within. This mission is what sticks in my mind when I think about the poor checkpoints in this game. This is an escort mission, meaning that our progression is directly tied to how fast these three bozos move. Dying at any point kicks you right back to the beginning. This sucks. So many missions before and after this have plenty of checkpoints littered throughout, so you don't have to redo the whole thing. For some reason though, all of the most annoying ones pretty much universally put you all the way back as a little chef's kiss on this crap Sunday. Jak and Kira have a fabricated falling out, so we get to do the next speeder race as Daxter, which, while visually hilarious, is the same mechanically as before.
I'm proud of you, Dax.
Really?
Aw, how sweet.
Maybe later, if you're a good boy.
And you ruined it. The underground gets attacked by some walking tanks, which we dispose of in quick form, and at this point I'm convinced no one else is actually in this fight. Up next, Samos, the old one again, has us go to his old hut to pick up his Amazon delivery he left behind. The Titan suit only appears 3 times in Jak 2, and all of these were initially fine, but did grow annoying the longer they went on. I like that the suit is fast, and I like that it turns fully to face the direction you point before moving. I dislike that it has no ranged ability. The hitboxes on its attacks are so janky most enemies can latch on at least once before going down. Dying in any of these missions, of course, means starting over from the beginning. Daxter makes a valid point about the potential paradox unfolding before us, and Samos can't help but be a tool about it. Hey, did you know the plants could be scared? Well, young Samos just told us, and that's probably a bad thing, right? It's never good when the trees are afraid of something. Turns out they're right to be afraid, because Praxis plans to crack the precursor stone wide open, which will definitely end all life on the planet. Moving forward, because we're not going to do anything about that impending doom, I guess, it's time to win another speeder race. Errol's so happy for us, he lights off some fireworks. What a nice guy. Once we convince Ashlyn that her father isn't actually that great of a guy overall, she sends us to go blow up some more important stuff. At the end of that, we find out that, oh no, Crew is actually also not a super great guy overall. He's built the bomb to crack open the precursor stone. The Baron plans to FedEx this to the Metalhead nest and destroy them from within. We decide to not let this happen, and Crew immediately goes hostile. The Crew fight is underwhelming compared to the rest. He disappears while you fight these little holograms. Once those are all gone, he shows up and gives a pitiful effort so we can shoot him down with ease. 1, 2, 3 strikes are out and Crew is no more. Now, what do you think our next step should be after yet another potentially catastrophic plot moment? Whack-a-mole? Sure, why not?
Great shot, Daxter.
Turns out the whack-a-mole machine held the critically important time map thing we need, so I'm glad this arcade game wasn't rigged. Some Metalheads show up, and as it turns out, the city is now teeming with them. Vin lets us know over the radio that Core is a traitor. The shield wall has been turned off, and then promptly dies off screen, which is a huge injustice in my opinion. This part is pretty cool actually. Seeing the climax of the war, with the Metalheads clearly winning, gives these final few missions a nice sense of urgency. Some of the guards don't seem to care about this as much as me. A little jaunt underwater to find Sig, and now we get to escape this infested underground area with him. The biggest bug to ever exist chases us, but through some clever platforming and luck, we both escape unharmed and ready to keep fighting.
Nothing'll stop us, cause
Excuse me while I spend the next week mourning the death of the most pure man to ever live, R.I.P. Sig. And now for the final stretch. Core reveals himself as actually being the Metalhead leader, immediately squashes the Baron, and flies off in search of the precursor stone. The Baron reveals that it's actually just 20 feet away, so I guess the early bird didn't get this worm, and we walk away with it in hand. I can't help but feel like we could have done more to help in that scene, but oh well. The final mission is an assault on the Metalhead nest. A nice note here is that all the way up to now, and including this final mission, the game has been throwing new enemy types at us every now and then. The variety of Metalheads is refreshing after mowing down swaths of the same guard over and over and over. Smack the precursor stone into a big gun to blow the door down, and we're off. This final scene before the boss really throws me a loop because of this one line.
Don't you recognize him? The boy is you, Jak.
This one moment opens up a whole mess of time travel nonsense. If this boy is Jak's and he was born here and he needed adult Jak to come and save the day so he could go into the past and save the day back there, just open the gate in the past and return to the future to save the day and send himself back into the past.
Honey, the more you think about it, the more it hurts the head.
Listen, I'm no scientist, but something about this really isn't adding up. Let's just fight Core and get this whole mess sorted. The Core fight is unfortunately pretty lackluster. I like the arena, and I love Core's design, but dropping a bunch of eggs while I pump bullet after bullet into him doesn't feel like something the ancient Metalhead leader would do. And then when he does jump down, his attempts to swipe at us are almost comical. Anyway, he sprouts some wings, hugs the wall for some reason, and then promptly explodes. The precursor stone, which is actually an egg, hatches a new precursor, starting the race over for at least a bit longer, and we get our ending. Kid Jak goes back with young Samos, and the rest of us stay behind, even though Kira probably should have wanted to go back home more than she did. But we needed another almost kiss at the end, so sorry Kira. And so, it's a happy ending. We won, and all the people we don't like are gone. Surely nothing bad will ever happen again. Also, Sig is alive, and hey, look at that, I guess they do call him an Otzel. So we've wrapped up Jak 2. All said and done, this is still a fine game. The improvements made, and the critically insane story far outweigh my frustrations. So would I recommend this game today? Yeah, probably. The only people I know play Animal Crossing, so they wouldn't listen to me, but I'll still recommend it. Let me know what you think in the comments, and please point out if I missed anything important. I'd love to hear it.